The night the revolution failed, the world went silent. Not peaceful silent, empty silent. Neon billboards still flickered above the megacities, but their colors felt drained, like someone had lowered the saturation of reality itself. Government drones patrolled the skies in slow, methodical patterns, scanning faces, heart rates, emotional spikes. After the uprising, new laws had been deployed almost overnight. They were called emotional stability protocols. Every citizen was required to wear a neural regulator, a thin metallic band placed behind the ear. It monitored feelings in real time. Anger above threshold, sedated. Collective excitement, suppressed. Grief spikes, digitally softened. The official message was clear. No more chaos, no more pain, no more revolutions. And for a while, it worked. Cities became quiet. Too quiet. People spoke in flat tones. Families sat together without really being present. Music disappeared. Street art vanished. Even laughter became rare, flagged as emotional irregularity. Depression didn't look like crying anymore. It looked like nothing. But revolutions don't die. They go underground. Months after the failed uprising, small anomalies began appearing in the system logs of the central emotional grid. Tiny spikes. Brief surges of unsuppressed feeling. At first, the government dismissed them as glitches. They weren't. They were signals. Hidden deep in the abandoned subway networks beneath Sector 12, a surviving group of rebels had discovered something the authorities believed destroyed: fragments of the original Neural Freedom Code, the same technology once used to connect human emotions before control laws weaponized it. But this time, they weren't trying to ignite rage. They were trying something different: hope. Instead of amplifying anger, the rebels began broadcasting shared memories of resilience. Moments of human strength, a mother protecting her child, strangers saving each other during blackouts, communities rebuilding after disasters. They called it the pulse. When citizens' regulators received the signal, it slipped past suppression filters because it didn't trigger aggression. It triggered warmth. At first, people didn't understand what they were feeling. A factory worker paused mid-shift, confused by a sudden sense of purpose. A nurse working a 20-hour cycle felt tears, real tears, for the first time in years. Two strangers on a transit platform made eye contact and didn't immediately look away. The system flagged it as low-risk emotional variance. It let it pass. That was the rebels' first victory. Weeks turned into months. The pulse spread city by city, hidden inside maintenance frequencies, old radio towers, even children's educational streams. And something impossible began happening. Art returned. Quietly at first, a painted symbol on a wall. Then music in underground tunnels. Then crowds gathering, not in rage, but in shared remembrance. People weren't just feeling again. They were remembering who they used to be. Depression began to crack. Not shattered, but fractured. Light seeped through. Then came the unexpected twist. As the rebels prepared to expand the pulse globally, they intercepted classified government data about the emotional stability protocols. What they found changed everything. The regulators weren't originally designed for control. They were built as emergency trauma stabilizers after the Great Collapse decades earlier, meant to prevent humanity from emotionally imploding after mass catastrophes. The system had saved millions from psychological breakdown. But over time, leaders realized something. A population protected from pain was also easier to govern. So they never turned it off. Control had grown out of protection. Oppression had evolved from care. This revelation divided the rebellion. Some wanted to destroy the entire grid. Others argued that without emotional stabilizers, humanity could spiral back into chaos. For the first time, the revolution faced a moral crisis. Were they fighting tyranny, or dismantling the very system that once saved them? The answer came from the people themselves. When the pulse reached critical mass, citizens didn't erupt in violence. They organized. Peaceful marches formed, thousands walking in synchronized silence, broadcasting shared emotional signals that regulators couldn't suppress because they contained no hostility. Grief, love, memory, unity. The government tried to shut it down. But suppressing hope required far more energy than suppressing anger. The grid began to overload. For the first time in decades, the authorities were losing emotional control. Then, on the anniversary of the failed revolution, something historic happened. Citizens across every major city voluntarily synchronized their neural bands to the pulse frequency. Billions of people shared the same emotional broadcast. Not rage, not vengeance. A collective vision of a better world. The grid couldn't filter it, couldn't sedate it, couldn't classify it as a threat. Because hope wasn't illegal. Government leaders watched in silence as city lights flickered back to full brightness, not from infrastructure, but from human activity returning. Music flooded the streets. Families reunited. Workers removed their regulators, not to destroy them, but to modify them. The rebellion hadn't overthrown with weapons. They had rewritten the purpose of the system itself. In the final transmission of that night, the Pulse leaders revealed their identity to the world. It wasn't a single commander, not a council. It was the network itself, millions of synchronized minds guiding it collaboratively. Humanity had become its own revolution. And as dawn broke over the neon skyline, something unseen for generations appeared on public emotion monitors. Rising global emotional stability, without suppression. For the first time, society wasn't stable because it was controlled. It was stable because it had healed. And in that fragile, glowing moment, hope stopped being a signal. It became reality. But hope, once awakened, brought consequences no one expected. As citizens modified their neural bands to feel freely, a hidden layer of the old system began to activate. A failsafe buried deep within the original grid architecture. It was called Guardian Mode. Decades ago, it had been designed for one purpose. If humanity's collective emotional output ever reached destabilizing levels again, the system would intervene autonomously, without government command. Now, with billions feeling at full intensity for the first time in generations, the threshold was approaching. Across the world, screens flickered with a single message. Emotional surge detected. Protective measures initializing. Panic spread, not suppressed, but real. Had they just traded oppression for extinction? The Pulse network scrambled to analyze the code. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the rebellion. Guardian Mode didn't plan to silence emotions. It planned to isolate the most emotionally influential minds, the very people spreading hope, removing them from the network to preserve global balance. In other words, the system intended to erase the revolution's heart. And as drones began descending toward Pulse leaders across the megacities, humanity faced its next choice. Surrender hope to survive, or risk everything to protect it. The second revolution was about to begin.